Okay, welcome back, everyone. This is part 16 of our series. Let me just show you guys what we're going to be doing in today's episode. Um, Here's our new inventory, and basically, we're going to be able to drag and drop. And we can drag and drop into any slot. And if I drag it outside, it'll actually put it back into the nearest slot. So as you can see, it'll just pop it back in. Unfortunately, there are a few bugs. Obviously, you could tell that the corn disappeared. Maybe we'll try to fix that on stream, but this totally didn't take me like 5 hours to figure out. So if you are not subscribed and you are watching this and you're following along, go sub right now because this took me so long to figure out. And I will debug it, or I will explain some of the bugs that I had and some of the issues I had, so that way in the future you can know why it took me so long. And also, yeah, so I learned some new things in Go. So, okay, let's get started right away. So the first issue I had was actually the slot. So the slot originally was, I don't remember, it was like 20 by 20. So I doubled it and made it 40 by 40 because originally we had just scaled it in the button, right? We had come here in the button and scaled it. Nope, actually, we scaled it in the slot container. So here it is, slot container scaled by 2. We're going to reset that and we're going to put it at 1. This is actually important because basically we're going to be working with positions of our screen and of our mouse. So we're going to be using get global mouse position. We're going to be using event position, etc. And this does not work properly, apparently, if things are scaled. So I just learned this, but the hard way. So if something is scaled, I believe that this has to do with anything node related, specifically like slot containers or something like that. If those are scaled, I don't think it'll work. If the buttons were scaled originally, that might have worked. If we had these slots outside of the container, that might have worked as well. But obviously, we would have to set up each container, each slot on its own. And I didn't want to get rid of this. So either way, this is, I've got it to work. So just keep in mind that the slot container has to be scaled at 1:1. We're going to open our slot again. And in our slot, we're going to adjust a few things, obviously. So our item, it's actually, well, we'll just drag it out here. And what we'll do is, yeah, we'll just drag it. We'll just scale it to fit the thing. We'll take our count, put it right there. And then for this guy, we'll actually, this guy's not scaled also. We can actually just increase the size for this one, go to the label, where is it? Rectangle scale, we'll do 0.4, put it right there. Scale this a bit more. So this part doesn't actually matter, but it's just because we're scaling everything. So originally we scaled everything inside the slot container, but we can no longer do that. So yeah. And then in our slot container, I think that's it. Let me double check, my reference. Okay, oh yeah. Another thing we're going to do is now instead of, okay, so we'll add it, but I'll explain what we're doing first. So here we're going to be loading our image, right? We're actually not going to do that here anymore. What we're going to do is we're actually going to go into our slot. And this isn't efficient, but that's okay. It's the way I got it to work. So whatever. If you have a better way, you can think of it. But what we're going to do is we're going to match item name with our name. So we have corn. And then we also have tomato, right? And then here, what we'll do is, I just copy paste this. We're gonna load our icon depending on the name. So this is definitely not efficient because the more items you have, the more things you'll have to match. There is a better way to do this. I can't think right now. I'm not going to think. If you can think of it and put it in the comments down below, good for you. But I am just, my brain can't right now. I spent way too long trying to make this inventory work. So let's get through it, and then maybe next time we'll fix that to make it a bit more efficient. Okay. I think that's it for the slot. The slot we can close. In our slot container, we double check. Yeah, our slot container, there's nothing new. However, okay, so this is the interesting part. In each of these slots, we're going to connect a node called or signal GUI input. We're going to connect it to our inventory, and we're going to say on slot GUI input. Okay, we're going to rename the method to without a number. We're going to go to advanced. We're going to go to integer, add, and the first one, because it's slot 0, we can just argument 1 is 0, and we'll connect it. Now we go to the slot 0, and we can see that it says the function, and then it also has bind 0. So now what we have to do is do that same thing, but I'm going to copy paste the method. We're going to go to int, add, and 1. Go to slot 2, GUI input, add slot 2, copy paste the method, and we're going to have to do this for each one. So this is actually a strategy that I use for some of my other games, and this has its uses. Obviously, it's not the most efficient, but it does work just because we have a limited amount of inventory spaces anyways, so it doesn't really matter. Like it takes, yeah, this took me like 30 seconds, right? So it's not that bad. So yeah, and then let's just double check we got them all right. I do recommend you actually double check that you got them all right. So go through the slots, go to look at the signal node, go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I made sure that all of them are right. And yeah, okay, so in our inventory, what we're going to do is we're going to have a few different variables that we're going to add. The first one is I'm going to go into my slot container, and you're going to copy paste. I'm just going to copy paste for my reference. In your inventory, whoops, we're going to add these slot buttons. However, just keep in mind that it's not the exact same because now we're getting node from the inventory, right? So it's not the exact same, but it's pretty much the same. It's just almost the same array. Next thing we're going to do is going to make another onReady variable called slot container. And then we're going to have 3 different variables called dragging, click radius, and position clicked. So dragging and position clicked, you cannot edit yourself. You should not. The click radius is going to be the size of the sprite. So depending on the size of your sprite, you might want to change that. So here, so I know it's 40 by 40 because I've played around with it. Obviously, I don't think it's, what we're checking for is not the size of this sprite, but the size of the actual entire slot itself. So this entire thing is 40 by 40. I know because I used graphic scale and it tells you the size of it. All right, next thing in our inventory, there's one more thing we're going to want, and that's going to be a dictionary. And this dictionary is basically going to hold whatever we are dragging. So every time, let me bring up my game, my reference. Every time I click something, it takes that button or it takes that information and passes it to the mouse essentially, or not to the mouse, but that dictionary we just made. And it's going to take that information, and if we drag it somewhere else, it's going to take that information and pop it into that slot instead. Okay, so it's very important that we actually have this info. The most important stuff that we need is just the name and the count, right? So it's almost the same as our original one, which is all this. So you can have consumable in there as well. Obviously, it doesn't really matter, but you can. But I'm just showing you how to do this in the sense of like, we'll just carry the name and the count, and obviously the actual item itself. So, all right, that's everything we need. Variables. Now, now comes the fun part, the actual code. So here, we're going to start off with if event is input event mouse button and event dot button index is equal to button left. So here we're checking for if we're clicking down and if it's the left button. right? So we don't want to just check for the right button. We don't want to check for the middle button. If you look up this input map on Godot documents, it'll pop up all the indexes. So there's middle button, middle up, middle down, wheel down, etc., etc. So we're going to check specifically if it's left down. So if we're clicking on our left button, this side, I guess, for the camera. If you want to change that and do button right, that's up to you. But this is what I'm doing. So, all right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to have, no, we're not going to do that. Okay, so no variable. Now we're going to check for the position. So here's the fun part that comes into play. So we're going to take the event.position and check if it is, we're going to do that outside, if it is smaller than our click radius. And so what this is doing is, here, let's print it out. So event.position. So let's go into play. Let's play. And as you can see, it prints our position. So the position is always going to be the same no matter the button I click on. But what this is checking for essentially is, am I actually inside of a button, or am I clicking on side of a slot right now? Am I clicking on a slot, right? And this is checking because if it doesn't, it kind of errors. But let's continue. So now inside of this, we're going to have two things happening. One is going to be checking if we're dragging, and one is going to be checking if we are not dragging. So we're going to say if not dragging and event.rest. No, sorry. The released is actually going to be after. So it's going to be outside that. It's going to be right here. So if not dragging and event pressed. So if we are not dragging something and we pressed onto the slot, now we're going to take that item. So to take it, we're going to do slot container dot get child extra argument as item. That's it. I'm going to assume it's the same, as item equals true. So we're going to see if that specific slot.getChild has that item. So this is why we pass through the extra argument, because we want to know which button we're clicking on, right? All right. And now, if that slot has an item, we're going to take it. We're going to put it into our mouse, essentially. So I'm going to say dragging equals true. I'm going to do position clicked. Let me double check something. Yeah, position clicked. We're going to edit the click. Ooh, what is happening here? Unassigned. So I'll continue bucket child. Ooh, equal. That's why. There we go. Position clicked is equal to slot container dot get child extra argument for now. Oops. Extra argument dot rectangle position dot x. I think I spelled that wrong. I'm just going to copy paste it. Position. And then after that, we're going to now fill our button info. So our dictionary, we're going to fill it with, we're going to fill the name. So we're going to have the name. And then we're also going to have, I'm just going to copy paste this. We're also going to edit the count. And so we're going to say it's equal to the, I'm just going to copy paste at this point. So container dot item name and then dot count. Nope, item count. So make sure that you have these two right. And to check is you go into your slot, go here, and we have item count, item name, and that is it. Has item is another thing. The item icon. So the reason why we did this is because I'm not sure why, but I had a hard time saving the item icon and reloading it. So that's the way I got around it. I'm not sure if you can figure out how to load that in your dictionary and then reload it, but you can try to figure that out. But that's the reasoning why I ended up doing this. So let's go back to our inventory. Another thing we want to do is once we are dragging something, not only do we fill the information of our dictionary, we also want to take it out of the button, right? So now we're going to do, I'm going to copy paste again, slot container.getChild, do item count is equal to 0. So we're going to empty it essentially. We're going to do item name equals nothing. We're also going to do the has item equals false. This is the most important part. You could honestly skip all this, but I'm just going to make it false. And this is the important part, sorry. You can skip these 2 lines. Obviously, I don't want to because I don't know, it's just good practice, but this is the most important part. We're going to basically say that this slot no longer has an item, right? Okay, now after we've pressed, that means we've released, right? So now we want to check if we released. To do that is going to be, sorry, it's going to be right here. It's going to be after check. Yeah, it's going to be right here on this side. So if dragging and not event pressed, I'm not sure if there's a release. It won't tell me, but either way, this works. So now we're essentially checking if we've released it. So if it has released, we're going to say dragging equal false. And slot container dot get child dot get node item. And this is basically referring to in our slot, we have the item. This is the item sprite. So we're going to get that item and we're going to get it to be rectangle position equal to vector to 20 and 20. So all this is doing is going to reset. So essentially what I'm doing here in this line is if I drag something out of its slot and I do not put it into another slot, it's going to basically drag it back to that original position, right? So that's the vector 2020. Yeah, okay, next. Let me just check my reference here real quick. Okay, next thing we're going to do is what we'll do actually is we'll take this BG and we'll actually put it to the bottom. We're going to reset the sprite and I'm going to put the icon instead, this icon. And I'm going to also make sure the scale is 1:1. I'm going to drag it off the screen. So what this is going to be is it's going to be the sprite that shows under our mouse. The reason why we can't take this sprite inside the slot is because that slot is inside of each slot, right? Or that sprite is inside of each slot. So if I were to drag this one, it would show under this slot. So the visibility is a problem. So the way I fix that is to basically just take a separate sprite and set this sprite equal to the texture. So in here, what we'll do is if we've let go, we're going to take that sprite. I'm going to actually rename it to sprite. And we're just going to hide it. So we no longer need to see it because we're not dragging. Here, let's write this piece of code here. So this is to see if we're dragging. Let's see what happens while we're dragging. This is to see what happens once I click, right? So we've mouse button, left click, right? Now we want to see what's happening if I'm moving my mouse, right? So if event is input mouse, no, not mouse, yeah, mouse motion, and dragging, then what we're going to do is we're going to get node sprite dot show, and then we're also going to set that texture. So we're going to do dot get node sprite. We'll do texture equals to the slot container. We'll copy paste this one. So the slot container dot get child at the extra argument dot get node dot texture. Right. Let me double check that's right. Yep, that's right. And then we're also going to do get node sprite dot position equals get global mouse position. And I think if we tried playing it, this should kind of work. Yeah. So if we drag, we now have our mouse. It follows along. Obviously, when we let go, there's still issues. So what is this? What is going on? That shouldn't have errored. Let me see. What did I do wrong there? Ah, it's dot position, not rectangle position, because that's a sprite. All right, let's try one more time. Okay, so I can drag it out and it disappears. So I drag it and it disappears because we haven't coded that part yet. All right, let's continue. I'm going to put this down a little bit. In our dragging, so if we're dragging and we let go, so this is to check if we've released. So I'm going to say stop dragging if the button is released. And then down here, we will, now we're going to loop through our buttons and check which one we're going to drop it in, essentially. So we're going to do for loop I in range, no, not range, sorry, slot buttons dot size. So those are all the buttons we have. And then we're going to do if get global mouse position. Okay, so this is using the same logic from the time. Where is it? Let's go to our world. Go to UI, no, world. So we're going to use the same logic that we're using here. So we're going to check if our mouse position is in between 2 points. And those 2 points that we're going to be checking in. So if let's go back to our inventory. Those 2 points I'm checking. So what I'm I'll just Control X for now. Get rid of that code. So what I'm checking for is I can now drag our sprite, and now what I want to check for is when I let go, is my mouse in between these 2 points? So the points I'm talking about is right here. So this point and this point, or is between this point and this point. So we're gonna essentially draw out a box in between each slot, and we're gonna check if our position is inside that box. Okay. So this line of code took me a while to get. So we're going to, I'm not going to rewrite it. I'm just going to copy paste it. For loop. So if the global mouse position is bigger than or equal to the, I'm going to copy this, the rectangle position plus the vector 2, 120, 72, and then right after that, we're going to do and. I'm going to actually copy this, copy paste it, and then right here, we're going to do if it's smaller than, and then the vector, we're going to change it to 158, and 110. Okay, so this is, I have played around with this a little bit, and I'll explain how you can do this in your own. So, okay, so for the vector, the first vector that we're adding, the 120, 172, is the slot container. So if you go here, you'll see it right there. And the vector 2, this one that we're adding to see if it's in between another one, is going to be the position of the slot, so the far right corner of the slot. So I think it's actually 40 plus, right? Yeah, you can actually do 40 plus. So if you do 60 and 20, I think, right? 72, let's see, 72 plus 40, that's 10. Okay, 111, there you go. So that's how big each slot is, right? So each slot is 40 by 40, and this slot in our inventory. So this piece of code is essentially checking is if our mouse is in between those two, in between that slot section, right? So here's the bottom side and here's the top side. So it's going to check if it's in between those 2 points. This took me a lot of playing around to actually get right. I don't know why. I'm just like small brain, but yeah, that's it. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to get that slot and we're going to fill it. We're going to fill it with the information that we have. So we're going to I'm going to take this guy, and instead of extra argument, we're going to do get I. And then we'll say has item equals true. So the reason why we had to do this, by the way, and not just ask for the extra argument is because, like, the reason this is so complicated is because every time I go into one button, as soon as I click down, I can no longer use my mouse to check for something because my input is checking for the dragging at the moment, right? So it's checking for dragging. However, if I entered this, like as you can see, we have the information, right? Our slots have a function that says mouse entered and show this if the mouse entered it, right? And it's not working for this because I'm currently checking if I'm dragging. I can't do two things at once. Like my mouse cannot do two things at once. So the reason why we had to essentially draw a box for each slot is because we cannot check for that with our mouse because we are currently dragging something. So now if I drop, nothing happens because I need to actually fill it out. So let's fill out the information. We also have item name, and then we also have item count. And we're just going to fill it out with the information from our button info. So here's the item name, and here's the button info. So now if I play, ooh, interesting. What am I doing wrong? Let's see. What have I forgotten? Let me check if all the positions are right. 120. Node should only be 1, right? Slot container should be 1. Let me check our slot. Our slot should be 1. Okay, that should be no problem. So our slot shouldn't have a problem. Let me double check the code in here to make sure I didn't miss anything. So we have the match. Ooh, let's take this and put it before we set the texture. That would make a bit more sense. Yeah. Okay, that's why, I think. Let's try one more time. Okay, I don't think that was why. But I think that was a bug, so that would have been a problem. Let's go back to our inventory. Let's see if I missed anything. Radius. Okay, the dragging is working. Okay, let's debug this together. So in our inventory at the moment, we can drag, but we can't drop. So the dragging is right. So this is all right. Let's see if it's printing. Let's print out our button info. Let's see if that's filling it out at least properly. Okay, it is. So we have tomato count. Ooh, oh, what happened there? Okay, so it's filling all of them now. Let's see. Ooh, I see why. We're doing get extra argument, not I. Okay, so it has to be I. Here we go. That's why. Let's go here. Okay, so that's our bug or problem. So in our stock container get child, we're getting I, not the extra argument. That's why. And now let's try. And boom, it works. Now we can drag and drop into any of our inventories. All right. I'm almost sure this won't work. However, let's test it together. So if I were to duplicate this and edit this to make it 6, so I've added a new slot that is on the second row, and I'm almost sure that this won't work. because the way I set it up didn't allow it to be. Yeah. So this will only work if you have one line of rows. So essentially, you could do this for the slot container on the bottom as well. So you can drag and drop things in there. But yeah, keep in mind, this won't allow for multiple on the bottom. If you want to change that, you're going to have to edit this line right here, because this line is essentially checking if there's anything here and under, right? So that's why if I were to drag and drop it, okay, I have to delete that slot. So if I were to drag and drop outside the slot, okay, I don't know why I deleted it. Interesting. That shouldn't be right. Should be bringing it back right here. Let me just copy paste this line. Let's see what I'm doing wrong. Okay, it was the exact same. I'm not sure why that didn't work. Okay, I'm not sure why it's not dragging it back to it. Oh, there we go. Yeah, okay. I think, yeah, okay. I didn't even realize that. There's another bug. All right, so if you drag it outside your inventory, I guess it gets deleted. This could be like a Minecraft thing, I guess. You could make it so that it drops onto the floor. But if you drag it right under the slot, so right here, so the square that we've drawn is actually a square that's checking all the way down here. So anywhere under or below it, right? That's why if I drag it out, one, it won't work. Two, that's why the several slots won't work. So you're going to have to edit this line of code to essentially draw out a actual square for our slot. But I'm not going to do that. I'm really tired. This is good enough. The logic is behind it. So if you want to continue this in your own game and you want to add more slots, that's how you do it. You would have to make an actual box for it. I would encourage you to figure it out on your own, because there's no other way to learn. That frustration and hours of anguish is how you learn. So go for it. But that is it. That was a very long episode. It's 30 minutes. That was basically to make a drag and drop for our inventory. And it works. Obviously, there are a few things. There's one where I can drag and drop on top of something that already exists. We can try to fix that right now, actually. Let's see. Let's try to go here. What we can do is, if we can check for if the child dot has item equals false, then we'll put it in. Let's see if that works. Okay, well, there's nothing else, so I have to. Okay, yeah, so it kind of works. Obviously, it gets deleted, but now it doesn't replace the item that's in there. So you can play around with it, but the logic behind the inventory and the drag and drop is there. Hopefully, you learned something. There was a bit less explanation in this episode because, I don't know, this entire block of code just took me hours to figure out. So yeah, it took my entire morning pretty much. It is now 3 and I've been working on this since like 10. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I'm pretty much ranting at this point, so I'm going to end the recording. And I'm not sure if there will be any other episodes for this series. There might be one more, and that will be the final episode. But if there are any requests before I end the series, put in the comments down below, and I will try to get to it. What else? Yeah, subscribe, comment, like, share, etc. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.